Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Witch of Bees and Bones. I wanted to start right off today and start a little discussion, which will probably continue in future videos, discussing ancestors. I've been keeping, that makes it sound creepy when I say I've been keeping an eye on, I've been watching Claire Goodchild's content about 100 Days of Ancestors. I see that, and my lovely friend Jess of Jess Reads Cards has been posting about her work with ancestors, and Justin, the Witch of Enchantment, has been discussing ancestors. I saw in a video recently, and it's something that's found its way into my practice, honestly, somewhat unexpectedly. And I pulled cards yesterday, and as I said, I don't typically share the cards that I pull that day. And I almost sat down, but I wanted to sit on this for a minute and really think about how I wanted to do this. So, you've all heard me talk about how much I love my dad and how close I was to him, which is very true. I was also very close to my mother's grandmother, my mother's mother and her father, my grandparents. The house I live in actually belonged to them. And I was very, very close to them. And without getting too personal, I had a very complicated slash difficult slash hard relationship with my own mom. And she passed, I think it was six, we might be at 7 years now. I don't math well, I'll be honest. And I didn't incorporate her into my practice until fairly recently. I had a lot to heal. I had a lot of negative thoughts and emotions, and I am not sugarcoating anything that I experienced. But I also, in having some time without my mom, have realized that as hard as it was for me as her only child, to experience the things with her that I did, living in her head must have been excruciating. My mom suffered from mostly, with very, very few exceptions, untreated mental illness. And as a person that has been a counselor in my prior profession, and who is a healer and who has a lot of compassion and a lot of grace for people, I realized that my own grace for my mother had really gotten worn down to the nub, so to speak. And I, again, am not here to be like, oh, everything's wonderful and all of that. I can say that I've forgiven her. I can say that I'm healing those wounds, and I can say that I can now think about my mother and not have it be immediately negative. I have a lot more compassion around her and my experience as her child, because I've taken the time to look at that relationship. And in taking a step back from my shadow work and to shine a light on some things, it's allowed me to continue to soften around that experience. I am not here to say anything about mental health. I'm not here as a mental health practitioner. I no longer do that. It has nothing to do with that. This is purely my experience. And when you're experiencing a person with a mental illness, and you never really know what version of that person you're going to get, it's difficult and it's tedious and it's hard and it's painful. And so, all of that being said, when I was cleaning recently, I told you that I went through my house like I was on fire. I found a bunch of pictures of my mom in her youth, and I'm not prepared to show those on the channel yet because I'm still keeping them very personal. What I can say is that I had, let's see, one, two, three. I had three pictures. Well, one picture of my mom by herself, and a picture of she and my grandfather when she was little, and then my parents' wedding picture, um, all matted and framed beautifully. And I was going to put them on the other side of this room. This is my kind of library office area. And I was going to put them on the other far wall. And I decided very intentionally and very mindfully to put them above my desk, um, where I make these videos, where I pull cards, where I write letters, where I send emails, where I spend a fair bit of time when I'm home. And I did that so we can look at each other. And for a very long time, I thought that a lot of my magic came from my dad, and it absolutely did. There's no question. But having softened around my mother and doing my own ancestor work in my practice, I've realized that my love of cooking and being a kitchen witch is from my mom. And I sold their house recently, and there was her kitchen witch, which is like haggy crone in tattered clothes riding a broom, but my mom always had one in her kitchen, and I took that with me, and now I have it. Um, when my mom and dad got married, she couldn't cook, and a funny story. My dad had been married, he'd had 5 kids, he'd had a whole life, and so when he and my mom married, it was just the two of them for 6 years, I believe, before I came along. And my mom didn't know how to cook. And so he came home from work one day and my mom had cooked dinner. And my dad, being the sweet man he was, said, "Oh my God, this soup is delicious. Thank you so much." And my mom evidently got really pissed off because she said to him, "That's not soup. It's fucking mashed potatoes." And I can laugh about that now, which is a really cool thing. Because for a very long time, anything to do with my mother, I shut down, I shut out, I got by, I did the best I could, and I'm in this lovely space that still has some discomfort in it, of where I can look at this picture, and again, I'll show it at some point when I talk more about my ancestor work. But right now, I just got the pictures back last week and I'd like to keep it personal. But I've got this really beautiful picture of my mom. And there are times that I can see myself in her or see her in myself when I look in the mirror. And that used to really bother me, um, because I didn't think my mother was physically unattractive. I just thought her personality was ugly. And that's straight up honesty. And so when people would tell me, "Oh my God, you look so much like your mom," even though they meant it as a compliment, I would take offense to it, or I would internally take offense to it. Um, and again, I'm not sugarcoating everything, I'm not sugarcoating anything, but I'm also looking at things holistically and not just at the bad and the hard. My mom loved animals. My mom loved animals. And so I know that part of my love for them came from my parents. And so I pulled cards yesterday and looking at the deck, and I know that I mentioned this when I first talked about this deck, and it kind of knocked me on my ass, I'm not gonna lie. It is the Woodland Wardens deck, and it was the trout and the lily of the valley. And lily of the valley were one of my mom's favorite flowers. Trout was one of my dad's favorite fish to fish for. And I have a tattoo of a lily of the valley on my shoulder in memory of my mom, which is really when the healing started there. So in the mornings when I'm pulling cards and I have my tea and I have Elijah on me or near me, and I've got my candle and I've got my Palo Santo, I also have my ancestors. I have my mom and my dad. I have my grandfather and my grandmother. And I feel surrounded and protected and powerful in a way that before that I hadn't. And that's not to say I didn't feel those things before, because I did, but this is a different level. This is a different way. And it occurred to me that it's because I've softened and because I've done a lot of hard is an understatement, excruciating fucking work around my relationship with my mom and around being her daughter and around childhood upwards to well into my 40s of things. And I have opted to make my ancestors part of my practice because, for better or worse, I come from them. I am a culmination of them and of whatever I've created in and for myself. And those are really beautiful things. And because of my experiences with my mother, I do have more compassion for people, and I do have grace for people, and I do have a lot of strength and fortitude for myself. And I'm just really, I'm really psyched for myself that I've gotten to this point. And I'm not going to be posting 100 Day of Ancestors. I think it's beautiful. I love following it. I'm not in that place right now. But it's so lovely to me. And I have incorporated my family and my ancestors, both in pictures and in memory and in spirit into my practice, into my daily draws, into my journaling, into like visibly being there when I look up. And I'm just, I didn't think I'd ever be here. And it's because of my hard work and because of my practice and because of grace and fortitude and hard fucking work that I got here. And I know that I'm rambling a bit. When my mother passed away, I found her. My mother's only, or one of her greatest wishes was to not die alone, and she did. With the circumstances of how she passed, even if I had been in the house, she still would have died alone. It was very quick. It was a cardiac episode, and from what the medical examiner said, it was immediate. There was no time to get help. There was no time for anything. And that was hard for me. I've been around death, I've been around dying, I've been around with every family member that I've been alive for. I've been with them when they passed, except for my mom. And I always felt badly that I wasn't there. But I also had a difficult relationship with her, and so there was a lot of emotions when she passed. There was sadness, there was grief, and to be totally honest, there was relief. She had mental health issues, she had a lot of physical issues, physical health issues, She was slated for, I believe it was her 30th surgery the week that she passed, unexpectedly, strangely enough. Um, and grief is such a strange thing, and I do grief well. I hold space well for grief, but I had complicated grief, and that's not something people talk a lot about. And I would like to discuss that in another video because I feel like it deserves it. So if you all would like to hear about my thoughts and my practice around complicated grief, I'm more than happy to do that. I feel like this video has gone long enough for where I started, and I went off on a tangent, and I'm going to rein it back in again. But why I started down that path is that when it's complicated, it's hard to process because you're feeling all of these things, and grief is erratic as it is, but to be, it is socially unacceptable, air quotes, to be relieved when someone dies. And I was. And people were really questioning my grief around that. And, um, how I could go to work and how I could go to the grocery store and certain things, which is so very strange to me. I would never ever think to question somebody on like what they're doing when a parent died. Tangent again. I'm healing. I've healed and continue to heal a lot of that. And getting the pictures of my family properly matted and framed and hung where I see them all of the time has helped with that. Having them present in pictures and not just in spirit when I pull cards and when I journal and when I do videos, and when I write or whatever it is I'm doing has really added another beautiful layer to my practice as a witch. Because I can say whatever issues my mom and I had, she never took issue with my practice. And I don't know if she understood it, but that was never a bone of contention with her. Ever, 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 ever. And I didn't realize how important that was until later on, much later on, recently, in fact. So again, this has been another rambly video. I also want to say this caveat that if you're a person who has experienced trauma with your parent, I understand how complicated that is. I am not saying forgive and forget. I am not saying like let it go. I'm saying do what you need to do to be safe and take care of yourself. This is purely my journey and what I've experienced. I'm not here to tell anybody else how to live, how to grieve, how to experience trauma or how to deal with trauma. This is purely the things I have done. I want everyone to be safe for themselves, and I understand that there are ancestors and that there are family members that are not, will not, and have not ever been safe. I fully understand that, and I acknowledge that. My experience was one of some lack of safety, and a lot of not being sure what version of someone I was going to get and how tumultuous and difficult that was. So I'm not, again, I think it's really necessary that I'm not speaking to anyone else's experience except for mine. I think this has been a really long video. I appreciate you all bearing with me. I appreciate you all so much. And this card just really told me that this is something that I needed to talk about. That and seeing Claire's posts and Jess's posts and Justin's posts and video. So thank you so much. Be kind to yourself. Be graceful with others and yourself. And I hope you find something really beautiful that makes you smile and sustains you a bit. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Bye.